Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to another episode where we're diving into the Qur'an year timeline. Miraj Mohiddin here, bringing you this Qur'an year timeline so that you guys can master it, crush it, and share it. So, if you remember in the previous episodes, we covered the entire Meccan period from Qur'an years 1 through 12. I'm not even going to review them because I know you guys, you got that locked in your memory here, inside out. So, if you have any questions, you want to review it, of course, you can always go back and look at the previous videos. But for now, we're going to dive into the very trialing and difficult. What was this? Remember this, Sticky? The early Medinan quadrant, the third quadrant right here. We're going to dive into this quadrant right here. I'm going to remove these stickers here just to kind of clean things up. And remember, step one, we said we got to break this into 6 separate Qur'an years, and we had already cut this in half. And then we're going to cut this, kind of try to equidistant thirds here, like that. And then here, like that. Okay, that looks pretty good. Make sure all the hash marks look good. And let's number these. So this is 13, this is 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Okay, let's dive into it. Now we know the first year, that was Qur'an year 13, that was one of our H's, right? We had Hira, Hamza, and now we have the Hijra. So let's write Hijra in right here for 13. Hijra, right? So the Hijra happened in Qur'an year 13. Now the mnemonic for a lot of these mnemonics like year 5 and 11 rhymes with heaven, we had these kind of simple mnemonics for each year. This quadrant, I have a mnemonic that covers the entire year in one mnemonic. And so what I want you guys to do is remember this very important sentence because it summarizes what happened in the third quadrant, okay? So early Medina, remember the sticker right here? I'm going to put it at the top right here. I'm going to describe to you real quickly what happened in early Medina. I'll say it first. Remember the sentence. The Hijra resulted in battle upon battle till Hudaybiyah. The Hijra resulted in battle upon battle till Hudaybiyah. In fact, I want to magically have that sentence appear here right now. Here we go. The Hijra resulted in battle upon battle till Hudaybiyah. Now, why did I write it like this? Here's the key. I want you to look at the first letter in each word. The Hijra, H, resulted in battle upon battle till Hudaybiyah. Okay? I'm going to write it out here again. H, R, B, U, B, T, H. These are our mnemonics right here, okay? H, R, B, U, B, T, H. Now this is what happened. If you look at the story, the Hijra, after the Prophet made the Hijra, he moved this community to Medina. This town that was called Yathrib later became known as Medina, the city of the Prophet, and the city of lights, Madinat al-Munawwara, right? The city of light, of Nur. And so the Prophet, when he moved this community over there, the Meccans weren't happy. They weren't happy that he could just get away with things and continue to grow his mission. So what the Meccans did, the Prophet, peace be upon him, those who migrated to Medina, they had to flee. They basically just could carry what they could and left. It's not like they could pack everything into an RV and take all their belongings with them. They had to leave everything back in Mecca and just run for their lives. But that stuff was theirs. The Meccans stole everything that they left behind. They stole it, they assumed it for themselves, or they started trading their goods, stealing their wealth, and trading it for more wealth. And so what the Prophet, peace be upon him, allowed to happen is he allowed the Meccans who were forced to leave Mecca, which are now called the Muhajirin, or the emigrants, he allowed them to raid the caravans of the Meccans that were going by Medina so that they could take back a portion of what was theirs. Now, this might seem unusual to you. This was the way things were at the time. There was no legal enforcement in Arabia. There was no, police security system. There was no insurance policies. It was a very different time. I know a lot of people, I was just teaching a study group, and one of the issues that one of the people were having, there's a few people having, is how could the Prophet, peace be upon him, allow for caravan raids? And a lot of that, we'll dive deeper into that story, but you really have to understand the context of that society. And you can't judge the way you live according to the way other people live, because we take so many things for granted, for the fact that, like, we can take people to court and we can file a claim, or we can sue people, or whatever. There was no systems of justice back then, and this was one of the systems of justice, was to raid the caravan. They weren't taking stuff that wasn't theirs, they were taking stuff that was taken from them. And so what we have in the year after the Hijrah is the year of the raids. And this is Quran year 13 right here, right? So this will be 14 here, R. And so Quran year 14 is the year of the raids. Quran year 14. Now, one of those raids the caravan happened to belong to one of the biggest enemies of the Prophet and one of the wealthiest men in Mecca. That's why he was one of the biggest enemies of the Prophet. He had the most to lose. Remember, the people in power usually are the ones who are the most resistant to any kind of social reform, whether it was back then or it is today. And so this person by the name of Abu Sufyan had like the motherlode caravan, and it was coming back from Syria. They had traded a lot of the goods of the Muslims, and they were coming back, and the Prophet said, let's raid this caravan of Abu Sufyan and take back what was taken from us. That ended up turning into a battle, where the Abu Sufyan found out that the Muslims were coming for him, and so he sent word to Mecca and got reinforcements, and 1,000 people showed up outside of this area outside of Medina called Badr. And that's where the Muslims and the Meccans, the Quraysh, fought their first battle. The battle of what? Badr. So this is in year 15. So this is the B now. So this is the battle of Badr, right here. And that was a very famous battle because the Muslims were outnumbered 3-1. There were a little over 300 Muslims versus 1,000 Quraysh. And somehow, with God's help, the Muslims were able to defeat the Meccans. It was an incredible victory. It's often likened to Moses' Red Sea moment, where you're facing overwhelming odds. You're facing the sea, and you can hear like kind of the Pharaoh's army coming up behind you, and you feel like you're facing near extermination, and yet somehow God opens up a way so that you can pass through. And that's what it was like for the Muslims with the Prophet at the Battle of Badr. So many lessons from all of these stories, but that's what happened in year 15. So after that battle, the Meccans go home licking their wounds, very upset, overwhelmed, can't believe that they lost this battle. They thought they would crush the Prophet and the Muslims, and they are going home having lost so many of their leaders and so many of their fighters. And so what they decide to do is to come back the following year, in year 16, and try to just destroy the city of Medina once and for all. And that battle takes place near the mountain of, and it starts with, can you figure out what letter it starts with? It starts with U, because we're here at U in Quran year 16. And so this is U, the Battle of Uhud. The Battle of Uhud is a very important battle, and there are a lot of lessons in the Battle of Uhud, but I will just kind of tell you what happened in the end. The Meccans were never able to achieve their goal of destroying the Prophet and the city of Medina, but they inflicted a lot of injury to the Muslims. And because the Muslims got overconfident, they forgot to obey the Prophet. There's a whole story of the archers who forgot to obey the Prophet and opened up kind of a flank in their army, and the Meccans came around, and they kind of, created a lot of they were able to achieve a lot, but they didn't achieve their goal. So in a way, Badr was kind of for the Muslims, and Uhud was kind of for the pagans, the Quraysh, the Meccans. And so after this battle of Badr and Uhud, they decide, let's just have one rematch. It's kind of like 1-1. Let's just do a rematch, right? Championship game. We're going to fight each other to the end, and this will settle the score between the people of Medina and the people of Mecca. And so that rematch takes place, or is supposed to take place again at Badr. And so this is now 17. This is the B at 17, so we're going to write Badr again here. Okay, but because there's 2 Badrs, we're going to call this Badr 1, and we'll call this Badr 2. So guess what? The Muslims, they know that the Meccans are showing up at Badr again, so they get their army ready, and they march to Badr to fight. But the Quraysh, they can never get their act together. They're still licking their wounds after Uhud. They have too many other issues going on in the city. They never show up, and they forfeit the battle at Badr. But for the Prophet and the Muslims, it's a victory for them because they showed up to fight and the enemy just couldn't make it happen. So we now have the Hijrah raids, Badr 1, Uhud, Badr 2. So what happens at this point? Well, let me take a drink of water because we have a lot to talk about now. After Badr 2, the Meccans, imagine you're a Quraysh, you're a Meccan, right? For 12 years, Muhammad has been in your city and he's spreading this message of calling for oneness in worship to God, of the one God, and social reform, economic reform. We need to start taking care of the people around us. We can't just be hoarding wealth for ourselves and not being generous and compassionate to the people around us. Social welfare movement. They're not having it. And so the rich, they kicked Muhammad and his believers out, his followers out to Medina. Now they're trying to attack him in this far. They can't just leave him alone and kick him out. They had to chase after him and try to squash him. But they're unable to do it. They tried at Badr, and they had 3-1 odds and they couldn't do it. At Uhud, they thought they could do it, but they weren't able to complete the job. And so now at Badr, the next Badr, they couldn't do it again. They couldn't even show up to battle. What are they going to do? Clearly, they've realized we can't do this on our own. We need to get friends and maybe get some allies. And maybe together, if we all surround Medina at the same time and we kind of hit it from all different sides, then we can finally destroy the Prophet's movement, destroy this thing that he's calling for called Islam. And he won't bother us anymore. And so what they do is they reach out to these other enemy tribes, pagan tribes, okay? And they surround the city of Medina. And now the Prophet, peace be upon him, and the companions are surrounded, and they've never experienced this before. This is overwhelming. It was one thing to fight against the Quraysh, but it's another thing to fight against all of these tribes surrounding Medina. And so one companion famously comes up with the idea. He was from Persia, and many of you know his name. His name is Salman al-Farsi. He comes up with the idea, and he tells the Prophet, peace be upon him, he's like, look, and our people, whenever we were overwhelmed like this, what we would do is we would actually dig a trench around the most vulnerable parts of our fortresses so that the enemy can't cross over the trench because the horses don't want to cross over, and if they kind of fall in, you can get them and so forth. So he comes up with this idea of digging a trench. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, says this is an excellent idea and we don't have many other options and we don't have a lot of time. And so over the next week, they feverishly dig a trench, and this whole battle comes to be known as the Battle of the what? In year 18, it's the T, the Battle of the Trench. Okay, so this is the battle where the companions, they honestly thought that for 18 years they've been supporting the Prophet, peace be upon him, and now it's over. There's no way we're going to hold off, not just the Meccans, but the Hawazin tribe and all these other big, the Khatafan, these other big tribes who were attacking and had all this animosity. We can defend against the Meccans, but all of them together, impossible. How are we going to do this? And there are many surahs in the Qur'an that are being revealed during this difficult time, like Surah Ahzab, describing that the companions, it's like their hearts are in their throats. You know that feeling of really tightness and you don't know? And the Qur'an says they started having strange thoughts about Allah, meaning we followed this Prophet like you told us to for 18 years, and now we're just going to get destroyed? Aren't you with us? And the Quran replays in a lot of detail what happened in this battle. But ultimately what happens is that the enemies are unable to cross the trench and the other portions of the city. There's some subterfuge, and one of the Jewish clans in the city tries to kind of open up one of the back gates and let the enemy in. And yet the Prophet, peace upon him, is able to avoid that kind of weakness. And in the end, this huge windstorm comes through. It rips through the enemy camps. And it just sends the enemy running home. They're done with it. They're like, you know what? We've tried the siege for over a month. We've tried to destroy the city. It never happened. And the enemy runs away. And the Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him, and the Muslim community survives this incredibly stressful moment called the Battle of the Trench. So that took a little bit of time, I know. But this is the early Medinan period. And to recap, the early Medinan period is very simple. The Hijrah resulted in battle upon battle till Hudaybiyah. That's what we have here. H-R-B-U-B-T-H. Hijrah resulted in battle upon battle till, and then Hudaybiyah we know was 19. We already had that number. I hope you guys are enjoying this. I know this section, we covered a lot. Feel free to watch this video over and over again to review. Go to my website, download the free PDF where I teach all of this in paper. You can kind of follow through it, draw it over and over again, share it with your friends, enjoy it. And I can't wait to see you guys in the next episode, because we're going to finish the Quran Year Timeline in the next episode, and you're going to walk away knowing all of this stuff inside out. And that's when it really gets exciting, because we're going to build on this from there. Thanks for being a part of this. I'll see you guys soon, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.